What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. The Octopath Traveler sales are now out in Japan. We're going to take a look at all of that, including Captain Toad, because that might surprise a few people as well. We're going to go over all of those numbers, talk about a few other things, including Digimon making a return to Nintendo's platform, as well as still coming out on the PS4, and then a few other things. First, though, let's start with some quick news. I want to start with what has quickly become one of the most ridiculous, but still my favorite story so far this year, and that is, of course, that typo that was in Alien Colonial Marines. We talked about that a few days ago, where a typo actually caused the AI to act sporadically and not correct at all, and it was all down to a single letter, A, that messed up the word tether and turned it into teether. Well, it looks like Gearbox has job listings on their job listing site, where they're, of course, looking for people to work there, and one of them appears to make reference to this error, and as you're seeing here, it's called the Programming Copy Editor, and apparently this is mostly to review code for typos. Just that. In fact, what's really funny here is if you try to apply for it, one of the questions is if you can tell which one is correct between tether and teether. So it's pretty clear that Gearbox saw this, and they've recognized the issue, and I guess they're either hiring or it's a joke. I don't know, because they didn't really publicize it, and it was kind of spotted on Twitter by Nibelian. So this was really funny, and this is just a ridiculous situation, and this just kind of compounds on top of it. But man, this is gonna go down in gaming history as one of the biggest gaffes by a company, as just this game has been under such fire for so long, and one of the core issues being AI was all messed up by apparently a single letter. We also found out who Madden 19's cover athlete is. It's going to be Antonio Brown from the Pittsburgh Steelers. EA put out a full video about it and everything, so we saw him there. He's also now on the cover on different Madden Amazon pre-orders and everything. So there you go. If you're a fan of the Steelers, just know probably one of the best wide receivers in football right now is on the cover for Madden, and you might want to pick it up if you're a fan of the Steelers and you like to collect memorabilia and stuff. It looks like he's going to be on the cover. I know a lot of people who actually do that, who will buy Madden specifically because their favorite player or their team is on the cover. In this case, the Steelers were Antonio Brown. Then we saw Sega Ages, the first two games that are coming to the Switch. Remember, Sega Ages was revealed a while ago, actually in the same conference that they revealed Shenmue 1 and 2 HD Collection. Do you remember that? They talked about how there are going to be all these different games that are going to come to the Switch. Basically the Virtua Console, but not Nintendo's Virtua Console, essentially. So Sega is doing their own, much like how we're seeing all of those Neo Geo games come over, and it's the kind of their section. Sega's doing the same thing, and we found out what the first two games are going to be and when they're coming out. They're both coming out in August. This was all revealed in Famitsu. Appears to be, as far as we can tell, in Japan, although, of course, it's region-free. You can go on the Japanese eShop if you want and buy them, or really, I would assume these follow suit pretty quickly in the United States and other places as well. It's going to be Sonic the Hedgehog, the first one, and then Thunder Force 4, and they're going to be going for about 925 yen, which converts to $8.20 or so USD. So they're not going to be tremendously expensive or anything. As we figured, they're going to be, I guess, $9 or $10 when they come over to the United States and other places, probably around there. Generally, 920 yen that's pretty good. So I wouldn't expect them to be terribly expensive, though. But just know we have the first Sonic the Hedgehog and Thunder Force 4, and then I'm sure others will follow suit. I'm curious if they do a monthly release where one or two come out every month as they build that library. But hey, Sega Ages, next month, it's coming out. And then with that stuff out of the way, guys, let's jump into some of the bigger stuff. We're going to start right away with Octopath Traveler sales. These, of course, are the Media Crate sales charts over in Japan. They give us a look at physical sales week to week, and this does include the first 2 days of Octopath Traveler's sales on the market. Here we go. The top 10 Octopath Traveler directly at the top, as we expected, and it did eclipse over 100,000 units, 110,111 to be exact. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker directly below that, 41,852. That's a very strong opening for a re-release of a Wii U game. Mario Tennis Aces did get knocked down number 3 from number 1, something we expected. 21,838. That is coming up on 250,000 units overall here pretty quick. Splatoon 2 is down to number 4, but of course it has sold a tremendous amount and still is on those sales charts despite being out for quite a while now. Minecraft down number 5. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker for the 3DS. It was a dual release, if you remember, for the Switch and the 3DS. Then we have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Mary Skelter, which was also a new release here on the PS4. That is 10,370 in its debut week. And then we have Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which is interesting. It jumped up to number 9 from number 12 at 7,145 units. And then we have, of course, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild at number 10. Moving over to hardware, Nintendo Switch at the top, 50,239. That is up roughly 6,000 units from last week. This wasn't a massive jump. I was sure the Switch would have at least a somewhat of a jump. This is at least a 6,000 unit jump, but it's nothing crazy. That could be from stock or just people maybe already have Switches and it's just going to have this standard 45 to 50,000 until we get to things like Pokemon and Smash. The PS4 17,500 and at 96. That is almost within margin of error, but it is down a little bit from last week. The 3DS 7,131. Once again down a bit, but about within margin of error, about 100 units or so off. The PlayStation Vita actually up over 600 units. That's pretty cool to see. And then the Xbox One somehow found a way to drop down from 88 units down to 79. So there we have it. A game that shouldn't do well in 2018 since it's not a big, powerful 3D game or anything. Octopath Traveler, a game that really calls on old school 16-bit JRPG aspects from the late Super Nintendo to the early PlayStation 1 era. Did tremendously well, selling over 100,000 units despite having stock issues, as Square themselves put out on Twitter, "We're sorry, consider buying it digitally," although physical sales seem to be good in Japan consistently, so I'm sure there are a lot of people who want it physically, especially since you could almost consider Octopath Traveler a collector's item because it's an old school RPG like that. It's something you want to have physically, I get that. It's going to be interesting to see Famitsu's numbers as well, which I'll kind of keep up to date on. I generally track Media Creates for consistency across the board for us, but Famitsu does track digital apparently as well, despite their numbers sometimes being less than Media Creates, which makes no sense. But apparently they do track digital, which of course, Octopath Traveler having an issue with stock in Japan could have pushed Famitsu's numbers up a bit. So we'll check that out as well. But big congratulations to Square, Octopath, and everything. It's cool to see a game like that do this well in 2018. Captain Toad also obviously had a strong opening, despite it being a re-release or a port from the Wii U. Still did over 40,000 units on the Switch, over 10,000 units on the 3DS. So strong opening there. And just overall, once again, Nintendo just dominating Japan. I mean, seriously, it took over almost all of the top 10 with, I think, one PS4 game being in there with it. Yeah, Nintendo is pretty much just rolling along in Japan. Now, of course, the PS4 is consistently selling as a system as well, and it is actually coming up on 7 million units lifetime in Japan. That's a pretty good accomplishment for a system like that, a home console in Japan, which is not easy to do there. So overall, good sales in Japan pretty much across the board for Nintendo, and then the PS4 is continuing along at its slower pace, but it is chipping away at a big number of 7 million. Next up, let's talk about Digimon, as it looks like it is making its way to the Nintendo Switch and the PS4, of course. It's been going to the PS4 for a while, and the Vita. It looks like they're going to be leaving the Vita behind, I guess, now, and moving that development over to the Switch, which makes sense. It's kind of taken over in Japan at this point. And then, of course, we've seen the Digimon Cyber Sleuth games coming out pretty consistently now. The last one was in December on the PS4 and the Vita, and now, thanks to V-Jump, we get a scan and a look at the new Digimon game that is now coming to the PS4 and the Nintendo Switch. It's Digimon Survive. It's described as a strategy RPG with point-and-click overworld interactions, and it's going to be essentially, when you go into battle, it's going to be like a strategy turn-based style RPG where you move characters around a grid and everything. And if you're a fan, I guess, of the Digimon story, Cyber Sleuth, for example, like I said, Hacker's Memory, for example, is something you'll be wanting to look into. It's cool to see it making the jump to the Switch, as of course it will look better than what was on the Vita. Not quite as good as what's on the PS4, but for portable Digimon, that is a pretty big jump, obviously, in going from the Vita to the Switch, and it's just more Bandai Namco support going to the Switch, as they have told investors time and time again now that they are pushing a lot of resources to the Switch, and they just continue to show that here now with Digimon. We still need more information. Release date, we believe, is sometime in 2019, but there's no real window or anything. We just know it's coming out next year at some point. So there you go. If you're a fan of the Digimon series and you're hoping it would go to something like the Switch with its rise in Japan, there you go. That's leaving the Vita, going to the Switch. So get excited, but you're going to have to wait, I guess, until next year when it debuts on the PS4 and the Nintendo Switch. Next up, let's talk about the Culling 2. The Culling 2 is an interesting situation, because it is a game that came out after the Culling 1, which did well enough. People were fans of it and everything, but they left that game and they went to a game called the Culling 2. And if you've been online at all, you've probably seen something about this game. It came out and they pursued the Battle Royale genre heavily. And I understand why a lot of companies are doing this. We saw Radical Heights try and it didn't work out. And of course, people are chasing the Fortnite and the PUBG craze at this point with Battle Royale. Even Call of Duty, and we assume Battlefield are probably jumping in as well, just because it's hot right now. But the Culling 2 teaches us and developers that Battle Royale is not a slam dunk. It's not a sure thing, because Culling 2 came out and it was pretty much a poor version of PUBG, which is hard to really imagine because PUBG is kind of a poor version of PUBG, if that makes any sense. PUBG is not a well-optimized game in the first place, doesn't look good really, and then this game looked and ran worse. And the problem was people realized what it was very quickly, that it was kind of a ripoff of PUBG, and tried to take advantage of the Battle Royale genre, and people just stopped playing it. In fact, it got to a point where instead of filling out a room with 20 or so people, they would have like 2 or 3 people in there, which kind of made the idea of Battle Royale pointless, as you would wander around the map until somebody quit. It was just boring, right? Well, Xaviant Games, who's behind it, came out and said, listen, this didn't work out. They put a whole video out on Twitter, and they were trying to figure out what to do. So they also posted on YouTube a full sit-down with their developers and producers and everything, and they came out and said that they are taking the Culling 2 down because it's not working, and they're going back to the Culling 1. They're bringing that back. If you've already bought it, you can download it and play it and everything, and they're going to continue developing that rather than chase the Battle Royale craze, which is probably a good idea because, as we're seeing, it's not always a sure thing. It's not always a slam dunk, and I hope other developers have now seen what happened with the Culling 2, where there was a ton of pushback, and maybe they have learned a lesson as well as most consumers, where you don't always need to do Battle Royale to be successful. In fact, I think we're getting to a point where a lot of people are going to see Battle Royale games as trying to be copycats and chase it down. So I'm hoping everyone took notice of this and we don't see more and more Battle Royale just have Battle Royale. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a game that I desperately want to be real, and it looks like Capcom is completely teasing this thing, and we're going to talk about it again. I've already kind of talked about it here and there with trophies that appear to have been shown for the X Legacy Collection. Well, more teasing for Mega Man X9 are starting to surface, and this is actually in the physical soundtrack that has started to pop up a bit early in Japan. And if you get to the end of it, you'll actually see a passage that heavily implies that Mega Man X, that's right, X, his journey is not quite over yet. As you're seeing here, there's a booklet that comes with it, and in the last panel, in the game story summary page, right next to Mega Man X8, so of course that's where, you'd see like the next one, like X9, it says in Japanese, as you see there, it translates to, the story of X's fight is not yet over. And that really is interesting because that reminds me of a message that was given to fans for Mega Man 9, before Mega Man 9 was around, in the 20th anniversary book that was said, the legend is not yet complete. So, could we have a Mega Man X9? Honestly, I would be shocked if there was not a Mega Man X9 at this point after seeing Mega Man 11. And they seem to be reviving Mega Man. I honestly believe that there is a Mega Man X9 in development right now in Capcom, and they are teasing it in the collection. In fact, this Legacy Collection is a great way to get people caught up who maybe didn't play the X series and get people excited for the next one, right? I really do. And Mega Man 11, I'm hoping does well at its $30 price tag. I think a lot of people are going to go back to it and buy it and play it. I think it'll probably do really well on the Switch. Mostly because I don't know if there's going to be a massive performance difference between the Switch, PS4, Xbox One. So, of course, people will buy it on the Switch because it's a portable, it's a, it's a home console hybrid. But I just want to see X9, Collector's Edition, day one, I'm in. And I hope we're going to find more teases towards an X9 in this collection, as we already saw things with the achievements kind of referencing some future project. And now we're seeing it straight up at the end of the soundtrack booklet here. Here's hoping, guys. Mega Man X9. Come on. And guys, that's where we're going to leave it today for Newswave. Make sure you guys like the video if you liked it, dislike it if not, and let me know what you think about all the stuff we talked about today, whether there's the Digimon game coming out, or Octopath Traveler sales, or anything else, including Gearbox's job listing over the Typo. Make sure you guys subscribe if you're new here with the button right next to me. It really helps out the channel, and of course, stop by every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, where we do it all over again. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning.